Are you the type of person that when you have a dream or an idea, you take action on it and you do everything possible to make it happen? And then sometimes at some point in the journey, you get really exhausted because of how much of yourself you're putting into it? Or are you somebody who has a dream or an idea and you want to follow through, but you find that there's always something that gets in your way? You might find that in certain areas of your life you're one thing, in other areas of your life you're another. We all tend to be a bit of both. But this week's episode, we're going to dive into what it is to have a dream or an idea and the path to actually manifesting that into your reality, and some of the blocks, the obstacles and resistance that you can feel along the way. This is going to be a very logical and pragmatic description as to what is going on within you and what you're experiencing within, like the things that can really get in the way of you thriving. This episode is something you're going to want to come back to again and again. Even if you don't listen to it again, you're going to find that the remembrance, the memory of it's going to pop up for you every single time you find yourself pushing too much to get a result or procrastinating on even starting. So let's begin. Welcome to this week's episode of your Power Packed Podlets. My name is Rachel and I'm your host for these mini magical journeys together. And the idea for this week's episode has actually been born from a conversation I'm having in one of my one-on-one spaces. And I'm going to use the conversation with this one-on-one client as an example so you can understand in context some of the stuff that's going on in your inner landscape when you're moving forwards in your business. And I invite you to translate what I'm sharing into maybe something that you've experienced in the past, or even something you're going through right now. Because for some of you, there's this pattern that maybe you've been wanting to start a business, or you've been wanting to change how your business runs for quite a while. There was probably a point in time where things have been accumulating in your life that you reached a realization that things weren't the way you wanted them to be anymore. So I'd like you to contemplate a moment when that happened. I'm going to tell you what one of mine is. I had a thriving business. Things were going really well before quarantine. But for a period of about a year, something hadn't felt quite right. So I've been running this business for 4 or 5 years, maybe longer. And, I had lots of clients and I'd invested a lot of myself into building a brand, building a reputation, building my client list. And on the surface, it looked like everything was going really well, but there was something that I could feel was missing and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. I wasn't growing how I wanted to grow. I wasn't having the impact I wanted to have. And I really felt as though I was stagnant. There was no room for another level. And so there are moments in our lives when there's this growing realization, right? One of my coaches has taught me about the terror barrier. Bob Proctor's The Terror Barrier. And it's been a real game changer because this is where you get to compartmentalize the different parts of your journey. So this is the period when you go from what Bob Proctor calls bondage towards reason. So you're plodding along in life and things are good and there's stuff that's uncomfortable, but you're not really aware of it massively. And then maybe something happens or your awareness grows and you suddenly realize, wow, this isn't enough anymore. This isn't good enough. Or this thing in my life or these things in my life, they're not the way I want them to be. So if you're in a job and you're wanting to leave your job, can you remember the moment you started to realize you wanted to leave? For example, if you've got a business, things are going how they're going. Can you remember the moment you realized you wanted things to change in your business? Maybe you want to make more money, or you want more time off, or you want to make money whilst you're traveling, whilst you're taking rest, and not have to rebuild your income every time you take time off. There was a period you maybe didn't even realize it bothered you, and then suddenly it bothered you. So Bob Proctor talks about this. It's when you go from bondage into reason. So reason is the realization of the challenge, the problem, or the thing you want to change. So I'm going to tell you about this client. This client, This client went from reason to the next stage in the terror barrier, because there are 4 stages. You've got bondage, where you're unaware of the challenge or problem, or there isn't one. You've got reason, when you start to realize there's things you want to change, and this is the time when you're dreaming. Yeah, you're starting to contemplate, like, what would I like to do differently? What could that look like? This can be a really beautiful period of time, because you start to research, you start to ask questions, maybe you read books, you take courses, maybe you make small investments to learn things because you see a course that gives you some ideas. You're like, oh yeah, maybe by learning this, I'm going to gain more clarity on what to do and how to do it. Whilst you're in the reason stage, some of it can feel frustrating because you're not moving forwards, but it is not as challenging as the next stage, because you've got one more stage before you realize your dream. So going from where you are to where you want to be. So for a moment, before I share my client's story, I'd like you to think of an arena in your life or business where for a while you've been realizing you want things to change. You've got an idea of what you would like. What is that thing? What is that thing? Because we're going to talk about the path to get there. The stage between reason and freedom. Bob Proctor calls the stage of conflict. Now I'm going to reframe that name, that word. It's a great word to use because we do go through conflict, but we're going to reframe it so you can actually lean in to what Bob Proctor calls conflict and enjoy it because of the learning, the growth, the expansion, loving the effort, loving the challenges. We'll come to that in a moment. So this client has been in reason with an element in her business. She's been wanting to launch a program. Okay, so she's got a lot of expertise, a lot of experience, and she really wants to channel that into a program to help her clients. She knows how effective her work is. So she's been thinking about launching this program, and she's even had an idea of a date in her mind. In our one-on-one session, we sat down. She told me about this date, and I was like, right, well, let's start planning. And then suddenly it went from an idea, a dream, a thought, oh, wouldn't that be nice? Like playing with it, it can feel good, to emotional commitment, to a requirement to take action. There's an actual time frame. So what happened in this session, and now is the support. So after this session, I'm now in the support stage as she's applying, but also as she's navigating what it is to go from reason to conflict. Because the moment you take an idea and you actually set a date, you set a time frame, or you decide to fully commit to it, you enter a new era. I'd like you to imagine this dream, of what you want to create. You take it from an idea and you actually sit yourself down and you ask yourself, what do I have to do to make it real? Whatever that thing is that you want, what is it that you need to do to make it real? Because this is where the resistance is for so many people. So for this client to launch a program, first the discussion is about client acquisition, audience growth, program creation, branding, naming, what's the result, what's the outcome, what's the ideal client. There's so many elements to the conversation. Now, we've done it in an order that makes sense. She's not focusing on all of it at once. But what went from an idea into making it real is the realization of what's required to make it happen. Not just in terms of action, of learning and of effort, but also the resistance to being visible, to being seen, to selling, to not building from exhaustion, burnout, and overdoing, to not go into fight or flight response. So there's also like the inner stuff. And so what happens is so many people stay in the dreaming phase. So many people stay in the idea phase because the moment you commit to an idea is when all of your stuff will come up. So if you're a person who has a tendency to really push yourself towards a result, then you know that your journey there, you might burn out. You might not have free time. Maybe you're already time scarce, and so you can't even see how you're going to fit into your timetable. Suddenly, when you commit to something, you're like, okay, you start to realize all of the reasons you've not even started. And this is why most people don't begin, because there's always a myriad of reasons: not having enough time, not having the money to invest, already feeling burnt out, not knowing where to begin. Oh, it's let me wait until I've completed this. Let me wait until the summer. Let me wait until the beginning of next year. That's the perfect time to start. The moment we start to enter the phase of emotional commitment, that is when we tend to go, but I'm going to wait until all of the pieces of the puzzle are in place before I even start. I'm going to wait until I have the perfect plan. I mean, you can think of a million reasons why. I'd like you to consider your dream right now. What are all of the reasons you might not take action? And you might keep putting it off. What are all of the reasons that stop you moving forwards? Because there are so many famous quotes, right? I can't remember the one about just taking the first step. And it's such a simple perspective on it, and it is literally the case, because we start in our minds to worry about step 10 before we begin with step 1. And literally the only way you're going to cross that bridge between reason and freedom, so going through that era of conflict, is to take one step at a time. And when you take one step at a time, acknowledging that on your journey from reason towards freedom, you're going to encounter obstacles. You're going to encounter obstacles in, you might not know what to do or how to do it. You might feel overwhelmed with the amount of things to focus on. You don't know which thing to focus on first, like what's most important. But then you might encounter the inner stuff. Am I good enough? Is this going to work? Is anyone going to care? You might have past experiences of being burnt out, of being hurt, of investments of your time and money failing. And so you're actually avoiding feeling those things. You're like, I'm not even going to begin because I don't want to feel that again. There are so many things that can block us on the journey. And this is one of the things that my clients do, one of the things that I teach them to do as well and guide them with, is rather than allowing those physical obstacles in strategy, action and knowledge, or those internal, like energetic obstacles to get in the way, what I love doing is teaching my clients to see them as moments of expansion. I'm going to give you another example. I used to, for 12 plus years, part of my business was I worked as a personal trainer. I was a really good one as well. I really enjoyed it. And there are a lot of people that hate exercise. A lot of people, myself included before I became a gym junkie, a lot of people hate exercise. They've got all sorts of feelings and stories and like past traumas with exercise. And I was one of those people, so I really understood it in my clients. And so a big part of the work that I would do with people, it wasn't just the exercise itself, it was teaching people to actually fall in love with the effort, to genuinely enjoy the hard stuff, and to look forward to trying something that they couldn't do and that felt like a big effort in the body, because you can actually somatically, mentally and emotionally enjoy the hard things that are beneficial for you and moving you forwards. Like when you're guided to do things in a way that are good for you, you're not injuring yourself, you're not hurting yourself, you're not overdoing the things, you're finding that Goldilocks sweet spot. This was one of my zones of genius with clients. I would know what their sweet spot was. Not too hot, not too cold, not too hard, not too soft. That perfect point in the middle that was just right for the individual. And we'd be consistently working on that Goldilocks sweet spot. And for so many of them, it went from them, feeling that they had to exercise, to actually wanting to do it and looking forward to it, to missing it when they weren't doing it. Like, this is the magic of the journey, when you can enter that phase of what Bob Proctor calls conflict, but you can approach it, like my hairs are literally on end as I record this, when you can approach it from the excitement of who you get to become, of learning what it is to believe in yourself on greater and greater levels, because you're proving to you how capable you are, how strong you are, how willing you are to do the hard things. It's not that you're choosing the easy path, it's not that you're putting things off, it's not that you're overdoing. You're choosing to do what's best over what is easiest. Your relationship with yourself gets stronger as you see yourself progressing. That feeling of the joy of progress is so profound. And so this era, which can be so conflictive and be the reason that so many people end up giving up in business, or whatever dream, they end up giving up on it because it feels easier to go back to familiarity. It feels easier to give up because it feels so painful to go through conflict. If those people were to understand the magic of shifting what feels like hard work, like too much, shifting the feeling, shifting the approach, shifting the perspective, suddenly that whole experience changes. And you actually look forward to the challenge. This is where growth becomes fun. This is where you look forward to growing. And it's in this period with clients I'm consistently focusing on, just like I did with my personal training clients. It wouldn't be about pushing them consistently for growth. There would be programmed periods of rest, because in the rest is when the body is actually reaping the benefits of the effort. And it's exactly the same in your business. Because there are moments when you are expanding your leadership, expanding your nervous system capacity to hold more responsibility, increasing your confidence in public speaking. Like, there's so many things, like areas in which you're growing, and the moments that you pause and just allow yourself to be, not producing, not doing, you're just being, integrating, like appreciating how far you've already come. This is also a moment when you're reaping so many benefits. And so in this period, from reason towards freedom, there is so much beauty. You will have heard the Buddhist saying, the beauty is not in the destination, it's in the journey. And in business, it's so easy to focus on the destination. And I understand it. I find myself doing it too. The destination where you don't have to work so much. The destination where you can put responsibility down for a minute. The destination where you have reoccurring income coming in, whatever the destination is. When you can see that each goal in your business journey is a signpost. So think of like a goal, whether it's business or another arena. Can you see it as a signpost, not the destination? Or one of the destinations in your journey you get to enjoy. It's not the end destination. And really it's about who you become along the way there. The parts of yourself you get to meet and heal. The patterns and programs and conditioning that don't serve you, that you get to leave behind, that you meet because you're choosing to grow. Like, this is beautiful. And then there are moments when you arrive. Sometimes it's not when you arrive at the destination that you pause. Sometimes you're pausing along the journey. Because I'd like you to envision going on a journey. And sometimes on that journey, there are places they're not even on the map. And you stop and you're like, wow, this is beautiful. And so you pause and you actually enjoy like one of the less known places. Fewer tourists there. How many times have you done that traveling? And it's the same on your business journey. There will be moments in your journey you had no idea would be so beautiful. But you don't get to visit them unless you're walking the path in this way. open to seeing, open to experiencing, open to receiving. If, like me, you've traveled quite nomadically, backpacking, when you're backpacking, you meet the most incredible people along the way. People you didn't know you were going to meet who share their bread with you, they share their wisdom with you, they share their stories with you, and in some way they change your life. They're your teachers, your mentors, your guides. It's the same in your business journey. When you can travel like you would with a backpack on your back, like going out and exploring the beautiful landscape of business, you're going to encounter these people, these conversations along the way. So let me conclude, because when we talk about traveling in this way in your business, what does it look like? It looks like you actually opening yourself up to a different journey, to a journey of exploration where you're meeting people on that journey, other business owners, coaches, guides, mentors who can and help you in some way, who've got stories to share. So getting yourself into environments, into spaces where there are other business owners. And you can learn so much, not just from what they teach you, but from what they're doing, or from what they've done in the past, from how they've navigated challenge. There is so much embodied wisdom there. For those of you listening to this, maybe you enjoy how I share, maybe you really resonate with the way that I think. This is a lot of how I manage things in the school. Now, on your journey as a business owner, being in a space where you're coached, guided, mentored, having a coach, guide, or mentor is a real game changer. And so if you've contemplated or not this possibility, sometimes choosing the match for you when it comes to coach, guide, and mentor, that can be the biggest challenge, right? And so it's really not just about the result. It's about the experience and the journey, walking the path alongside that coach and mentor. What is it that they embody? What are their values and standards? Because you pick up not just on what somebody says, you pick up on what somebody assumes and from what they embody. You pick up on how they lead themselves. You hear it not just in words, but in their way of being. And this begins to normalize for you how you are leading and showing up in your business. So when you're choosing a coach, guide, or mentor, it's also contemplating that. What is it they embody? And is there something I wish to embody within myself in terms of mindset, self-regulation, values, standards, and ways of seeing the world and themselves? And I invite you to contemplate upon not having somebody like going for a 3-month course. A 3-month container is going to teach you something, but it's not going to guide you through the longevity of your journey. As you're navigating the ups, the downs, the ins and outs, the doubts, the wins, the challenges, which sometimes it is in moments of success that you encounter challenges you did not expect. Challenges in your leadership, in your responsibility, in your nervous system capacity. So what does it look like for you to have non-circumstantial support and guidance throughout the longevity of your career? What does it look like for you to actually choose that for yourself? To decide that you're somebody who's always going to make an abundance of money, and so having, investing whatever it is, to have that support, you're not even going to feel it. What is it to assume that and to build and run your business from that mentality and from that frequency? Because those of us you see growing fast, whilst also staying really grounded within, we're supported, we're resourced, and we're not walking this path alone. Because even though I have 2 decades of experience, even though I've taken a multitude of courses, The grounded leaders, we understand. We know so much and so little at the same time. We have so much experience, and yet we can tap into the experience of other people. I've got my own, but I also get to tap into the experience of this person and this person and this person to add more colour, more depth, more nuance. And it can sometimes be the slightest nuance in perspective that has a domino effect of difference in my business and my well-being. And that's something you can't put a price tag on. For me, one of the biggest mindset shifts was shifting from thinking about how much value I can get from the money I'm spending to choosing to value my mental well-being, my nervous system well-being, my inner space, and my time. So 2 things I value so much, and I'm willing to invest my money, because these are things I value my health and my time. And so I spend money to look after my time and my health. And this is a big shift in business. Some of you are already there. Some of you are going through this shift. So on that note, if you resonate with the way that I teach, potentially the School of Holistic Success is your next step. This is a business school for heart-led female entrepreneurs, because we talk about the female cycles, we focus on how we work emotionally as well as women. I'm going to include the link to the brochure in the description attached to this week's episode. And if you would like to talk with me about the options, just send me a DM. I look forward to connecting with you in next week's episode of your Power Packed Podlets. Signing off for today.